His fingers traced the scar on my neck, and the ballroom fell into a silence so absolute I could hear my own heartbeat hammering against my ribs. "Marked," he declared, his voice cutting through the crystalline air like a verdict, and I felt the weight of 100 judging eyes burning into my skin, each gaze sharper than the last, while my body trembled with a truth I didn't yet understand. Before we dive into this story, leave your comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us which city you're watching from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. The ballroom was drowning in voices sharp as cut glass and laughter polished to perfection when I entered. Chandelier lights spilled across crystal goblets, and every glance that turned toward me seemed to measure not just the fabric of my gown, but the very weight of my existence in this gilded world. "Too large," I heard one of them whisper, as if I was some misshapen extension of scandal itself. The label of "too fat to be an omega" had preceded me, floating like sour perfume among the kingdom's ladies. I, the bastard daughter of a forgotten count, brought to the castle out of charity, knew that every step I took was a reminder of where I didn't belong. The silk rustled against my heavy legs, and the sounds seemed to echo louder than permitted. I felt cold sweat at the nape of my neck, my heart pounding fast beneath a corset tied too tight, and an irrational desire to vanish between the marble columns. There was no place for me among these figures sculpted from porcelain and pride. I was the flaw in the perfect portrait, the piece the artist refused to sign. I remember looking at the mirror before leaving my chambers, seeing a woman with eyes too honest for the world she inhabited. I carry a small scar at the base of my neck, almost invisible, but it burns in moments of shame. My mother used to say it was a sign of destiny that one day someone would see beauty in it. That night, however, it was just another mark to hide. The ladies whispered that the king would never look at someone like me, that alphas were only attracted to delicate perfumes and fragile waists. I'd convinced myself for so long that they were right, until the instant he entered. The air changed weight, as if every current in the ballroom bent around a single man. The Alpha King, tall, cold, and terrifyingly serene. His presence carried the gravity of a storm about to break. Conversations ceased, musicians missed their rhythm, and I, without understanding why, forgot to breathe. He didn't look at anyone. He walked among the guests like someone crossing through a procession of shadows, and each step seemed to measure the souls of those who dared meet his gaze. Until his eyes found mine. There was something frozen and deep in that look, and at the same time, a recognition that dismantled me from within. As if I were a mirror he hadn't expected to find. I felt the world spin slowly, murmurs rising around me, social judgment ready to devour whatever was about to happen. I wanted to lower my gaze, but couldn't. He stopped before me, and the silence became absolute. An alpha never touched a woman without announcing his intention, and yet he did. With a controlled, firm gesture, the king extended his hand and touched my scar. The heat of his skin shattered every defense I'd built. The entire ballroom held its breath. "Marked," he said, his voice low as if sealing a decree. The word echoed like a sentence. Within seconds, stares transformed into razors. Ladies covered their mouths in shock. Lords exchanged tense glances, and I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. Marked before everyone by the one who never approached anyone. The cold king, distant, untouchable, had chosen me, or condemned me. My body trembled. Not from fear, but from a kind of ancient truth that recognizes itself without understanding. He withdrew with the same serenity with which he'd arrived, leaving behind the trail of an impossible gesture. And I, the woman labeled as too large, was now the epicenter of a scandal no one would dare ignore. The murmur spread like fire among the guests, each word more poisonous than the last. They said I'd bewitched him, that my mark was a sign of some pact. But what they didn't know was that his touch had awakened something in me. A silent strength, a pride buried beneath layers of shame and silence. That night, when the ballroom emptied and I stood alone among the echoes of scandal, I realized something had changed forever. I was no longer the tolerated shadow nor the object of pity. There was a line drawn between us, invisible but unbreakable. And deep down, I knew. The cold king who had marked my skin before the entire kingdom hadn't done so on impulse. He'd looked at me like someone recognizing an ancient debt, a bond forgotten by time. Since then, the days have carried the weight of approaching destiny. The castle seems to breathe with me, as if every wall listens to the murmur of what's coming. The ladies avoid crossing my path, servants observe me in silence, and when the king passes, the air seems to fold in on itself. They say he doesn't smile, that his heart is made of winter. But sometimes when I see him from afar, I feel the ice yield for a second, and something inside him struggles not to reveal itself. Perhaps he too carries an invisible mark. Perhaps we're two halves of the same secret. All I know is that the day he marked me wasn't the end of humiliation. It was the beginning of my story, and it's only just beginning. The morning after the marking ceremony, I woke to find a sealed letter slipped beneath my door. My hands shook as I broke the wax, the royal crest pressed deep into crimson. The words were brief, written in a hand that revealed nothing. The East Tower, midnight, come alone. No signature, no explanation. Just a command disguised as an invitation. I spent the day in a fog of uncertainty, my mind replaying the moment his fingers had traced my scar, the heat that had flooded through me, the way the world had tilted on its axis. The servants who brought my meals wouldn't meet my eyes. The seamstress who came to adjust my gowns worked in pointed silence, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. I was a ghost haunting my own life, visible yet erased. By evening, the castle had transformed into a maze of whispers. I caught fragments as I moved through corridors. Unnatural bond. Witchcraft. Surely. The king has never... Each phrase was a stone thrown at glass, and I felt myself shattering with each impact. When midnight approached, I wrapped myself in a dark cloak and moved through the castle's secret passages. The ones I'd discovered during my lonely childhood explorations. The East Tower loomed against the star-scattered sky, ancient and forbidding. My heart hammered against my ribs as I climbed the spiral stairs, each step an act of either courage or foolishness. I couldn't tell which. He was waiting by the window, his silhouette carved from shadow and moonlight. He didn't turn when I entered, but I felt his awareness of me like a physical touch. "You came," he said, and there was something almost surprised in his tone. "You commanded it," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I requested it. He turned then, and the moonlight caught his features, all sharp angles and controlled power. There's a difference, is there? When a king requests, what choice does anyone have? A ghost of something not quite a smile touched his lips. "You always have a choice. That's what makes you dangerous." The word hung between us and I felt my breath catch. Dangerous? I'm nobody. The bastard daughter of a forgotten nobleman brought here out of charity. "You're wrong." He moved toward me, and I forced myself not to step back. "You're the most dangerous thing in this kingdom right now. Do you know why I marked you?" I shook my head, unable to form words. "Because when I looked at you, I saw something I thought I'd killed years ago." His hand reached out, hovering near my scar but not touching. Hope, possibility, a future that isn't just duty and cold strategy. "I don't understand." "Neither do I. That's what terrifies me." His jaw tightened. "Every alpha in this castle, in this kingdom, has a destiny predetermined from birth. We're weapons bred for conquest and control. Emotions are weaknesses to be excised. Bonds are chains to be avoided. And then you walked into that ballroom, and everything I've been trained to believe crumbled." I found my voice, though it trembled. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to leave," he said, and my heart plummeted. "I want you to run as far from this castle as you can before you're destroyed by what's coming." "And if I don't want to run?" His eyes met mine, and I saw something wild and desperate there. "Then God help us both, because I don't know if I'm strong enough to protect you from what I am." The confession hung in the air between us, raw and honest. I took a step closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. Maybe I don't need protection. Maybe I need truth. "The truth will hurt you. Living as a shadow hurts more." He studied me for a long moment, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze, every secret and scar exposed. Finally he spoke, his voice low and weighted with history. "There's a prophecy," he began, "an old one from before the Great Wars. It speaks of a marked Omega, one who carries the sign of the ancient bloodline. They say she'll either save the kingdom or destroy it. When I saw your scar, I recognized the mark. It's identical to the one described in the prophecy down to its placement and shape. Cold flooded through me. That's impossible. It's just a scar. I got it when I was a child, falling from a horse. Or so you were told. He moved to a table where old scrolls lay unfurled. Your mother, what do you remember of her? She died when I was 7. She was a servant in my father's house. That's all I know. And your father never spoke of her lineage. My father never spoke to me at all, I said, bitterness seeping through. I was his shame, his mistake. He sent me away as soon as he could. The king's expression softened almost imperceptibly. What if I told you your mother was no servant? What if she was of the old blood, the line that ruled before the alphas rose to power? The room spun. I reached for the wall to steady myself. You're saying my mother was nobility? Ancient nobility. The kind that threatens every power structure in this kingdom. He rolled up the scrolls carefully. The mark on your neck isn't just a scar, it's a birthright. And there are people in this castle, in this kingdom, who would kill to keep that secret buried. I sank into a chair, my legs unable to support me. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. Because the moment I marked you publicly, I painted a target on your back. He knelt before me, and the gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that tears pricked my eyes. And because despite every rational thought in my head, despite every warning from my advisors, I can't seem to walk away from you. His hand covered mine, and the touch sent electricity through my veins. I'm asking you again, leave, tonight. I'll give you money, passage, a new identity. You can start over somewhere safe. I looked into his eyes, seeing the conflict there, the war between duty and desire. My whole life I'd been invisible, dismissed, told I was too much and not enough all at once. And here was the most powerful man in the kingdom, offering me escape, offering me truth, offering me something that looked dangerously like care. No, I whispered. His eyes widened slightly. No? I've spent my whole life running from who I am, hiding in corners, making myself small. I won't do it anymore. I stood and he rose with me. If there's truth to be found, I'll find it. If there's a prophecy to fulfill or fight, I'll face it. And if there are people who want me dead, let them come. Something fierce and proud blazed in his expression. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. I managed a shaky smile. But I'm done being afraid. He reached out and cupped my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. The gesture was gentle, at odds with everything I'd heard about the Cold King. Then I'll stand with you, whatever comes. Even if it cost you the throne, even then. The weight of that promise settled over us like a cloak. Outside, thunder rumbled, heralding a coming storm. Inside, something even more powerful was building, something that would either forge a new future or burn everything to ash. There's something you should know, I said softly, about what happened when you touched my mark. Tell me. I felt something, like a door opening inside me or a voice waking up. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I met his gaze. I think whatever power I might have inherited, it's been dormant. But your touch activated it, he finished, his expression grave. That's what I feared, and what I hoped. Which is it? Fear or hope? Both, he admitted. Always both with you. The clock tower struck 1, the deep bells reverberating through the stone. He stepped back, though I could see the effort it cost him. You should return to your chambers before you're missed. We'll need to be careful now. Eyes are everywhere, and not all of them friendly. When will I see you again? Soon. I'll send word. He moved to the door, opening it to peer into the darkened hallway. Go quickly. And remember, trust no one completely. Not even me. The warning should have frightened me, but instead it made me feel seen in a way I never had before. He wasn't treating me like porcelain or a problem to be solved. He was treating me like an equal, capable of understanding complexity and danger. I slipped past him into the corridor, but his hand caught mine for one brief moment. Sleep well, my marked one. The possessive phrase sent warmth flooding through me. I fled before he could see how deeply his words affected me, my cloak billowing behind me like wings. The castle was different now. Every shadow held possibility and threat. Every echo might be a spy or an ally. I made it back to my chambers without incident, but as I closed the door behind me, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. My room had been searched. The disturbance was subtle. Someone skilled had done this, but I knew my space too well. Drawers slightly askew, books not quite in their proper order, the edge of my mattress not tucked as I always left it. Someone was looking for something, or leaving a message. Either way, the game had begun in earnest. I moved to my bed and found, tucked beneath my pillow, a small piece of parchment. The message was brief and unsigned. Beware the Queen's court. They know what you are. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay awake, watching shadows dance across my ceiling, feeling the phantom warmth of his touch on my skin and wondering what tomorrow would bring. The mark on my neck burned as if alive, pulsing with each heartbeat, a reminder that nothing would ever be simple again. Outside my window, lightning split the sky, illuminating the castle in stark relief. Somewhere in these ancient halls, allies and enemies were making their moves. Somewhere, the Alpha King was probably plotting strategy, weighing options, trying to find a path through the maze we'd entered together. And I, the girl who'd been nobody, who'd been too much and not enough, lay in the darkness with a secret burning under my skin and a destiny I didn't understand reaching out with inevitable fingers. The storm broke with fury, rain lashing against stone, and I smiled into the darkness. Let it come. Let them all come. I was done hiding. The morning arrived grey and swollen with yesterday's storm. I dressed carefully, choosing a high-collared gown that covered my mark, as if hiding it could somehow undo what had been witnessed. The illusion lasted only as long as it took me to step into the hallway. The whispers started immediately, following me like a curse. Two noble women turned their backs as I approached, their disdain so palpable I could taste it, bitter on my tongue. Breakfast was an exercise in social warfare. The great dining hall hummed with conversation that died the moment I entered, then resurrected itself in hushed, venomous tones. I took my usual seat at the far end of the common table, the place reserved for those of ambiguous station. Neither servant nor nobility. Lady Meredith, the Queen's first lady-in-waiting, watched me with eyes like a hawk sighting prey. She was beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, all sharp edges and cold perfection. Her omega pheromones were legendary, subtle and intoxicating, the kind that had brought lesser alphas to their knees. That the king had never shown her interest was a wound she wore like armor. How fortunate, she said, her voice carrying across the hall with calculated precision, that some among us have found ways to elevate their station through such unconventional means. The table fell silent. Every eye turned to me. I swallowed the bite of bread that had turned to ash in my mouth. I'm not sure I understand your meaning, Lady Meredith. No? She smiled, and it was a predator's expression. How strange. I would think the King's marked one would understand everything. Heat flooded my cheeks, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. The King's actions are his own to explain, not mine. Oh, but you must have some insight. She leaned forward, her fingers drumming on the table. Tell us, did you use some family recipe? Some old omega trick passed down from your mother? We're also curious how a woman of your proportions managed to catch his attention. The cruelty in her words was designed to cut, and it did. I felt the familiar shame crawling up my spine, the weight of every judgment I'd carried since arriving at this castle. But underneath it, something new stirred. The power the king had spoken of, the birthright sleeping in my blood. I used nothing but myself, I said quietly, and was surprised by the strength in my voice. Perhaps that's what you find so threatening. The gasp that rippled through the room was audible. No one spoke to Lady Meredith that way. Her eyes narrowed to slits. Threatening? You think I find you threatening? She laughed, and others joined her. A chorus of crystalline mockery. You're a curiosity, nothing more. A momentary distraction for a king who has no queen. Once he's had his fill of your novelty, you'll return to being exactly what you were before. Nothing. I stood, my chair scraping against stone. Then you have nothing to worry about, do you? I left before she could respond, before the tears burning behind my eyes could fall. The hallways blurred as I walked, my feet carrying me without conscious thought. I ended up in the library, the one place I'd always felt safe. Books didn't judge. Words on pages didn't mock or exclude. I was pulling a volume on ancient history from a high shelf when I heard the door close behind me. I spun, expecting another confrontation, and froze. He stood there, the Alpha King, still wearing his formal court attire, looking like power incarnate and somehow, impossibly, uncertain. That was foolish, he said without preamble. Challenging Meredith in public. So I should have let her humiliate me. You should have ignored her. He moved closer, and I was struck again by how his presence changed the air itself. She's dangerous. Her family has the ear of the High Council, and they're already questioning my judgment in marking you. Maybe they're right to question it. I turned away, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. Maybe you made a mistake. Look at me. It wasn't quite a command, but close. I turned. He was right there, closer than I'd expected. I've made many mistakes in my life. You're not one of them. How can you be sure? Because for the first time in 10 years, I feel something other than duty. His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not touching. Do you know what it's like to go through life as a function rather than a person? To make every decision based on strategy and legacy rather than desire? No, I whispered, but I know what it's like to be invisible. To be seen and dismissed in the same glance. Then we're both prisoners, aren't we? In different cells of the same castle. The honesty in his words undid something in me. What do we do now? Now. A grim smile touched his lips. Now we prepare. The Queen's Court has requested a formal audience tomorrow. They want answers about the marking. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. The Queen's Court? But there is no queen. Exactly. It's a council of Omega families who consider themselves the guardians of royal tradition. They've been trying to secure a match for me since I took the throne. He moved to the window, his broad shoulders tense beneath expensive fabric. Meredith's mother sits at its head. Then I'm already condemned. Not if we're smart, he turned back to me. There's a way through this, but you'll need to trust me. Completely. I barely know you. Then let me change that. He crossed the room and took my hands. The touch sending that now familiar electricity through my system. Ask me anything. No lies, no evasions. Just truth. I studied his face, seeing past the cold mask to the man beneath. Why did you really mark me? Not the prophecy, not destiny. The real reason. His eyes held mine, and I saw something vulnerable there. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone fighting to exist in a world that wanted her erased. And I recognized that fight because I've been fighting it too, just in different armor. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You were brave enough to be yourself in a room full of people who despised you for it. That's rarer than you know. I wasn't being brave. I was just there. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear make you small. He released one of my hands to reach up, finally touching the mark on my neck. This mark, this scar you've carried, it's been a symbol of shame for you. I wanted to make it a symbol of strength instead. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. You don't understand what it's been like. Being too much and not enough all at once. Then tell me. And I did. Standing in that library with sunlight filtering through ancient windows, I told him everything. The whispers that followed me through my childhood. The way my father couldn't look at me without wincing. The servants who mocked my attempts to make myself smaller, quieter, less. The noble women who treated me like a cautionary tale. Every slight, every wound, every moment of crushing loneliness. He listened without interruption, and when I finished, his jaw was tight with suppressed rage. They're fools, he said finally. Every single one of them. They looked at you and saw only surface. They never bothered to look deeper, to see the strength it takes to survive that kind of cruelty. You're the first person who's ever said that. Then everyone else is blind. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his gaze. Tomorrow at the Queen's Court, they're going to try to tear you down. They'll question your worth, your breeding, your right to stand beside me. And I need you to remember something. What? That you belong here not because I marked you, but because you're strong enough to claim your place. His forehead touched mine, an intimate gesture that stole my breath. Will you trust me to protect you? I wanted to say yes, Every part of me wanted to collapse into his strength, let him shield me from the storm. But something held me back. I don't want protection. I want partnership. If I'm to face this, I need to face it as an equal, not a possession. Surprise flickered across his features, followed by something that might have been respect. Then we face it together. Equal partners in whatever comes, even if it costs you everything. Even then, he pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and reverent. But I won't let it come to that. We're going to find a way through. The library door crashed open and we sprang apart. A messenger stood there, eyes wide with alarm. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but the High Council demands your presence immediately. There's been an accusation. The king's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the cold, controlled ruler once more. What kind of accusation? Witchcraft, sire. The messenger's gaze flickered to me. Against the marked Omega? The world tilted. Witchcraft was a capital offense, one of the few crimes that carried an automatic death sentence. The king's hand found mine, squeezing once, hard. Then we go together. Now. As we followed the messenger through winding corridors, I felt the mark on my neck burning, pulsing with each heartbeat. The prophecy, the bloodline, the power sleeping in my veins, all of it was about to be tested. The Queen's Court had made their move faster than expected, and I realized with crystal clarity that this was only the beginning. The real battle hadn't even started yet. The High Council chamber was a cathedral of judgment, all soaring ceilings and ancient stones that seemed to absorb sound and light. Council members sat in a semicircle of ornate chairs, their faces carved from granite and disdain. At the center, in the petitioner's circle, stood Lady Meredith, her expression a perfect mask of concerned innocence. The king's hand remained on my elbow as we entered, a public declaration of solidarity that sent whispers ricocheting through the assembled nobles. Lord Chancellor Blackwood, a man whose distrust of anything outside tradition was legendary, rose from his seat. Your Majesty, how convenient that the accused has arrived so quickly. One might wonder if she was already in your private presence. His tone suggested impropriety so clearly that several council members gasped. Lady Alara was in the library conducting research. I was attending to matters of state in the adjacent study. The king's voice was ice over steel. Perhaps you'd like to explain why we were summoned with such urgency? Lady Meredith has brought forth serious allegations, Blackwood gestured to the woman, who stepped forward with practiced grace. I apologize for the distress this must cause. Your Majesty, but my conscience compels me to speak. Her voice trembled artfully. Yesterday evening, I witnessed the accused performing rituals in the East Garden. She was speaking in ancient tongues, burning herbs that are known to be used in Omega enchantments. When I approached to inquire about her activities, she threatened me, saying that any who opposed her would know the king's wrath. The lie was so bold, so perfectly delivered that for a moment I couldn't breathe. I'd been in the East Tower with the king at the time she described, but admitting that meant revealing our secret meeting. These are grave accusations, Blackwood said, his satisfaction barely concealed. Witchcraft used to manipulate the king's affections, threats against nobility. If proven true, the penalty is death. I felt the king's hand tighten on my arm, his anger a palpable force. And what proof do you offer besides Lady Meredith's testimony? I have witnesses. Meredith raised her hand and 3 servants stepped forward, their eyes downcast. They will confirm seeing the accused gathering strange herbs, speaking words no one could understand, and possessing objects of dark practice. My mind raced. The servants were probably coerced or bribed. The strange herbs were likely the medicinal plants I'd collected for my headaches. And the objects of dark practice could be anything. My mother's old journal, a piece of jewelry, anything they wanted to twist into evidence. Your Majesty, Blackwood continued, in light of these allegations, the Council recommends the accused be detained until a full investigation can be conducted. For your safety, of course. My safety. The king's laugh was sharp as broken glass. How considerate of you to be so concerned. Tell me, Lord Chancellor, where was this concern when actual threats to the throne were ignored? Or does your protective instinct only activate when it serves your political interests? The chamber fell silent. No one spoke to the Chancellor this way. Your Majesty, your personal feelings for the accused are clouding your judgment. Blackwood's face flushed with anger. This is precisely why the council exists, to provide objective counsel when emotions might lead you astray. Objective? The king released my arm and stepped forward, every inch the alpha ruler. There's nothing objective about this proceeding. It's a performance designed to remove someone you find inconvenient. Then let her answer the charges herself, Meredith interjected, her eyes gleaming with malice. Let her explain, under oath before this council, how she came to possess such detailed knowledge of royal marks, prophecies, and bloodlines. Let her explain why the king, who has rejected every suitable omega presented to him, suddenly marked a woman of questionable breeding within hours of meeting her. Unless she has something to hide, the trap was beautifully laid. Any explanation I gave would either reveal too much about my heritage or make me appear guilty of manipulation. The council watched me like wolves scenting blood. The king moved to speak, but I touched his arm, stopping him. If I was to be his equal partner, I needed to fight my own battles. I'll answer, I said, my voice carrying through the chamber. But first I have questions of my own. Gasps echoed. Blackwood's face purpled. The accused doesn't question this council. Why not? I stepped into the petitioner's circle, forcing myself to stand tall despite my trembling legs. You question me. You judge my breeding, my worth, my very existence in this castle. Shouldn't I be allowed to understand the source of such vehement opposition? You forget your place, Meredith hissed. No, I know exactly what my place is supposed to be. Invisible, voiceless, grateful for whatever scraps of acknowledgement I receive. I turned to face the full council, but I'm done accepting that place. So here's my question. Why are you so afraid of me? Afraid? Blackwood sputtered. Preposterous. Is it? Because from where I stand, this looks like fear. A woman marked by the king, nothing more, and suddenly there are accusations of witchcraft, demands for investigation, talk of death sentences. I met Meredith's gaze. What threat do I pose, really? I have no family, no fortune, no army. I'm just one person. Unless there's something about me that terrifies you. Your arrogance is astounding, Meredith said. It's not arrogance. It's clarity. I touched the mark on my neck, feeling its heat beneath my fingers. You say I bewitched the king, but he's the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, surrounded by advisors, protected by ancient laws. Do you really believe one woman with herbs could overcome all that? Or is it easier to believe in witchcraft than to accept that maybe, just maybe, he chose me for reasons you don't understand? The king stepped beside me, his presence a wall of support. Lady Alara raises valid points. This council has operated on assumption and prejudice rather than evidence. Evidence? Blackwood seized on the word. Very well, let's discuss evidence. The accused claims innocence, yet she cannot deny being in locations where witchcraft materials were found. She cannot deny speaking words in languages unknown to our people. She cannot deny that her marking was unprecedented and contrary to all tradition. Speaking foreign languages isn't witchcraft, I countered. My mother taught me her native tongue before she died. As for materials and locations, I gather herbs for medicinal purposes, a practice perfectly legal in this kingdom. And my marking? I looked at the king, seeing his silent encouragement. That was between His Majesty and myself, a private matter you've turned into public spectacle. Nothing involving the king is private, Blackwood snapped. His choices affect the entire kingdom. Then let me make my choice clear. The king's voice rang out like a bell. I marked Lady Alara of my own free will with full awareness of my actions. No magic was involved, no manipulation. If this council has a problem with my decision, you're welcome to challenge it through proper channels. But this trial, this accusation of witchcraft, ends now. Your Majesty, we cannot simply... Yes, you can. The alpha authority in his voice made even the most defiant council member flinch. Unless you have actual evidence, not circumstantial observations and paid testimony, you will withdraw these charges immediately. Blackwood and Meredith exchanged glances, and I saw the calculation there. They'd expected me to crumble, to give them ammunition. My defense had robbed them of their easy victory. We will withdraw the formal charge, Blackwood said slowly, but we must insist on a compromise. The council cannot in good conscience allow the marked Omega to remain in close proximity to your majesty without some assurance of her intentions and heritage." "What kind of assurance?" the king asked, his tone dangerous. "A formal investigation into her background, her mother's lineage, her father's true identity, the circumstances of her birth. If she's truly innocent and worthy of the mark, this investigation will prove it." Blackwood smiled thinly. "Surely neither of you would object to the truth coming to light." I felt the trap snap shut. The investigation would uncover exactly what the king had told me. My connection to the ancient bloodline, the prophecy, everything that would make me even more of a target. But refusing would look like guilt. "Fine," the king said before I could respond. "Conduct your investigation, but it will be done fairly, with representatives from multiple factions, not just those who've already declared opposition." "Agreed," Blackwood said too quickly. As the council dismissed us, I felt the weight of what had just happened. We'd won the battle but set up a war. Walking through the corridors back to relative privacy, the king's hand found mine. "That was brilliant," he said quietly. "The way you turned their accusations into questions about their motives." "I just spoke the truth. I'm tired of letting fear make me small." He stopped, pulling me into a shadowed alcove. "What you did in there, standing up to the most powerful people in the kingdom, that takes courage most people never find. Or stupidity. Both, remember?" His smile was genuine, transforming his face from cold king to something warmer, more human. "We knew they'd push back, but I didn't expect them to move this fast or this aggressively. Meredith hates me, and Blackwood sees me as a threat to his power. They're not wrong to see you as a threat. You are," he cupped my face, his touch gentle, "but not in the way they think. You threaten their control because you represent change, possibility, a future they can't dictate. What happens when the investigation reveals my bloodline? Then we deal with it. Together." His thumb brushed across my lower lip and I felt heat pool in my stomach. "But first, we need to prepare you. If they're going to dig into your past, we need to understand it better than they do." "How?" "There's someone who might have answers. Someone who knew your mother before she became a servant." His eyes held secrets. "But visiting her will be dangerous. She lives beyond the castle walls, in the old quarter where people still remember the time before Alpha rule." "When do we go?" "Tonight. When the castle sleeps and prying eyes are fewer." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Until then, stay in your chambers. Let them think you're frightened and hiding. It'll make them careless." He was right, but I hated the idea of hiding, of giving them the satisfaction. Still, I nodded. "And you?" "I have a high council to remind of who actually rules this kingdom." His smile was sharp. "And a few allies to call in. If Blackwood wants to play power games, I'll show him what real power looks like." As we parted, I felt the weight of everything pressing down. The investigation, the prophecy, the enemies gathering like storm clouds. But underneath it all, something else was growing. Not just attraction to this complicated man who'd marked me, but partnership. We were building something together. A foundation strong enough to weather what was coming. My chambers felt like a cage when I returned. But I used the time to think. The Queen's Court, the High Council, Lady Meredith, they all saw me as weak, easy to crush. That was my advantage. Let them underestimate me. Let them think marking me was the king's only mistake. When they realized the truth, when they understood what I actually was, it would be too late to stop what we were building. The mark on my neck pulsed with my heartbeat, alive with possibility. My mother's blood ran through my veins, carrying secrets and power that had been sleeping for too long. It was time to wake up, to claim what was mine. Let the investigation come. Let them dig into my past. They thought they'd find weakness, but they'd discover something far more dangerous. A woman who'd survived being nobody and emerged ready to be everything. The sun set outside my window, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Tonight I'd venture beyond these walls for the first time since arriving. Tonight I'd begin to uncover the truth of who I really was. And tomorrow the real game would begin. Midnight found me dressed in servant's clothes, my hair hidden beneath a plain cap, following the king through passages I'd never known existed. The castle was a honeycomb of secrets, and he knew every hidden path. We moved in silence, his hand occasionally reaching back to ensure I was still there. The touch brief, but grounding. We emerged into the night through a forgotten postern gate, the hinges well-oiled despite appearing rusted. The old quarter sprawled before us, a tangle of narrow streets and leaning buildings that predated the current castle. This was where the original city had thrived, before the Alpha Wars reshaped everything. "Stay close," he murmured, pulling a hood over his distinctive features. "These streets have eyes, and not all of them friendly." We navigated the maze of alleys, the stench of refuse and humanity thick in the air. This was a world away from the castle's perfumed halls, raw and real in ways that made my privileged misery seem almost quaint. People lived here in the cracks between power, surviving despite the kingdom's indifference. He stopped before a door marked with symbols I didn't recognize, ancient and oddly beautiful. 3 sharp knocks, a pause, then 2 more. The door opened to reveal an old woman whose eyes were clouded with cataracts, but somehow saw everything. "So," she said, her voice like gravel smoothed by water, "the king brings the marked one. Come in, before every spy in the quarter reports your presence." The interior was dim, lit by candles that gave off a sweet, unfamiliar smoke. Herbs hung from the ceiling in bunches, and the walls were covered in tapestries depicting scenes from a time I'd only read about in banned books. "Maven," the king said, his tone respectful in a way I'd never heard before. "We need information about—" "I know what you need." Maven moved to a chair with surprising grace for her age. "I've been waiting 20 years for this girl to appear." My heart hammered. "You knew my mother?" "Knew her." "Child, I delivered you." She gestured to a stool. "Sit. This story is long and your legs will tire before I'm done." I sat, the king standing behind me, his hand on my shoulder. Maven studied us both, her blind eyes somehow penetrating. "Your mother, Celestia, was the last daughter of the old blood, the line that ruled before the Alphas conquered. When the wars ended and the new order took power, most of the old families were slaughtered. Celestia survived only because she was a child, hidden away by loyalists." Maven's fingers traced patterns in the air. "She grew up in shadows, learning the old ways, carrying the weight of a murdered dynasty." "Why did she become a servant?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Survival. The safest place to hide is in plain sight. She took a position in a count's household, just another Omega serving nobility." Maven's expression softened. "Then she met your father and everything changed." "My father was a count," I protested. "He barely acknowledged my existence." "The count was not your father, child." Maven leaned forward. "Your father was far more dangerous. He was an alpha from one of the old families that had sided with the new regime. A man torn between old loyalties and new power. When he and Celestia fell in love, it was more than forbidden. It was treason for both bloodlines." The king's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Who was he?" "That's a question for another night, perhaps. What matters now is what happened next." Maven's face darkened. "Celestia became pregnant, and both families discovered the affair. There was a council, a secret one, where both sides agreed the child you were too dangerous to live. A bridge between old and new blood, a symbol of potential reconciliation they couldn't allow." Nausea rolled through me. "They tried to kill me." "They tried." Celestia fled to the count, a distant relation who owed her family an ancient debt. He took her in, but on conditions. She would serve as a common woman, and you would be raised as his bastard, hidden in shameful obscurity. Your real father was never to contact you, never to acknowledge you. As far as the world knew, you were the count's mistake. And my real father agreed to this? The betrayal cut deep. Your real father was found dead 3 days after you were born. Officially, it was a hunting accident. Unofficially, both sides wanted the problem erased." Maven sighed. "Celestia marked you herself using the old rituals. The scar on your neck is more than decoration. It's a seal, hiding your true power until the right moment." The king moved around to face Maven. "The prophecy speaks of a marked Omega who would either save or destroy the kingdom. Is she the one?" "Oh, yes." Maven's laugh was bitter. "Your advisors know it, or at least suspect it. That's why they're so desperate to remove her. The prophecy states that when the marked one bonds with an alpha of pure lineage, Their combined power will reshape everything. Either the old ways return or a new age begins, but the choice is theirs to make. And if she bonds with the wrong alpha? The king asked quietly. Then darkness falls and everything burns. Maven stood, moving to a locked chest. I've kept these for you, child. Your mother made me swear to give them to you when the time was right. She pulled out a bundle wrapped in faded silk. Inside was a journal, a pendant carved with symbols that matched my scar, and a small knife with a blade that gleamed despite its age. The journal is your mother's story, written for you. The pendant will help control your power as it wakes. And the knife? Maven smiled grimly. That's for when words and magic fail. I held the objects, feeling the weight of history in my hands. How do I control power I don't understand? You learn. You practice. You survive. Maven touched my face with surprising gentleness. Your mother saw a vision before she died of you standing between two worlds, making an impossible choice. She wanted you to know that whatever you choose, she's proud of you. Tears streamed down my face. She died when I was 7. I barely remember her. She remembered you every day. Every breath was an act of love, protecting you, preparing you for this moment. Maven turned to the king. And you, Alpha King, you've taken on more than you know by marking her. The old magic recognizes only true bonds. If your claim is false, if you're using her for political gain, the power will destroy you both. My claim is true, he said without hesitation. Then you're both fools. But Maven smiled as she said it. The best kind of fools, the ones who might actually survive what's coming. We left as quietly as we'd come, my mother's possessions hidden beneath my cloak. The old quarter was silent, but I felt eyes watching from shuttered windows. The king led me through different streets, taking a circuitous route back to the castle. Are you all right? He asked as we paused in a shadowed doorway. I don't know what I am. I clutched the bundle to my chest. Everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. Not everything. He turned me to face him. You're still the woman who stood up to the council. Still the person brave enough to claim her place. Learning about your blood doesn't change who you've become, doesn't it? I'm descended from the royal line they destroyed. I'm the daughter of a forbidden love that got both my parents killed. I'm a weapon that prophecies say will either save or destroy everything. My voice cracked. How am I supposed to be just me with all of that? By choosing to be. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Prophecies aren't destiny, they're possibilities. You don't have to be what they say you are. You get to decide. And if I decide wrong, then we face those consequences together. He kissed my forehead, then my closed eyelids, tasting the salt of my tears. But I don't believe you'll choose wrong. You have something none of the prophecies account for. What's that? A heart that knows what's right, even when the world tells you you're wrong. His thumb brushed my lips. That's rarer than any bloodline. We returned to the castle as dawn threatened the horizon, stealing back to our separate chambers before the servants began their morning rounds. I hid my mother's gifts in a loose floorboard I'd discovered years ago, then collapsed onto my bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. The journal called to me, its pages full of answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. But morning was coming, and with it more dangers. The investigation would begin in earnest, and every secret I held was a blade that could be used against me. I opened the journal as grey light crept through my window, and my mother's handwriting swam before my eyes. The first entry was dated the day I was born. My darling daughter, by the time you read this, I'll likely be gone. But know that every word I write is truth. Every memory I preserve is love. You are not a mistake, not a curse, not a burden. You are hope made flesh, the promise that two worlds might one day reconcile. Your father and I chose love over fear, and you are the beautiful consequence of that choice. Whatever happens, whatever you become, remember that you were wanted, cherished, loved beyond measure. The path ahead will be hard, but you are strong enough to walk it. You always were. I read through tears until the words blurred completely, my mother's voice echoing across the years. She'd known she was dying, known that forces beyond her control would try to destroy me. But she'd fought anyway, protected me anyway, loved me anyway. The journal detailed everything. The old royal line, the Alpha Wars, the secret council that had sentenced me to death. My father's true name, Lord Marcus Ashford, a general who'd helped win the war but lost his heart to the enemy. She wrote of the prophecy in detail, explaining that the marked Omega would have to choose between 3 paths: restore the old order, embrace the new, or forge something entirely different. The prophecy speaks of salvation or destruction, my mother had written, but I believe it's neither. I believe you'll find a third way, one no one has imagined yet. That's what hope does. It creates possibilities where none existed before. A knock at my door jerked me from the journal. I shoved it back into its hiding place and called out, "Enter!" A servant I didn't recognize stepped in, her face carefully neutral. "Lady Alara, the Queen's Court requests your presence at the morning assembly." They wished to formally introduce the investigation committee. So it was beginning. I dressed in the finest gown I owned, a deep blue that brought out my eyes and covered my marked scar with a high collar. If they wanted to investigate me, let them. I had nothing to hide anymore, or perhaps everything to reveal at the right moment. The throne room was packed with nobility, all pretending they weren't there specifically to watch me be humiliated. The Queen's Court sat in positions of honor, Meredith among them wearing a smile that promised violence. The king was already on his throne, his face an impassive mask, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. He knew what was coming as well as I did. Lord Blackwood called the assembly to order, and the formal investigation began. They would question everyone I'd ever interacted with, search every room I'd occupied, examine every possession. They had 3 weeks to compile their findings, after which the Queen's Court would determine my fitness to remain marked. "Do you have anything to say, Lady Alara?" Blackwood asked, his tone suggesting he hoped I'd incriminate myself. I stepped forward into the petitioner's circle for the second time in as many days. "Only that I welcome the investigation. I have nothing to hide, and truth has always been my ally." The lie came easily, and I saw doubt flicker across several faces. If I was guilty, I'd be afraid. If I was innocent, I'd be confident. By appearing calm, I confused them, which was exactly what I needed. "Then let the investigation commence," Blackwood declared. As I returned to my place among the lower nobility, I felt the king's eyes on me. This was just the beginning. They would dig, they would probe, they would eventually uncover things that raised more questions than answers. But that was fine, because while they were investigating my past, I'd be preparing for the future. My mother had given me the tools I needed: the pendant to control my power, the journal to understand my heritage, the knife to protect myself when all else failed. And I had something else: a king who'd chosen to stand with me, an alpha whose mark on my neck burned with possibility. Let them investigate. Let them judge. By the time they realized what I truly was, it would be too late to stop what we were building. The game had begun in earnest, and I was no longer playing defense. I was going to win. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into shadows and power. If this story touched your heart, moved your emotions, or made you feel something deep, I'd love to know. Please hit that like button, leave your comment telling me what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe for more intense emotional stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you the next chapter of passion, mystery, and courage. Until next time, may your own story be filled with strength and hope.